Have you ever looked inside um, a really well-run organization? It could be a startup, big company, even a nonprofit, and wondered how they always seem to stay on track, avoid the big pitfalls, and, well, just work effectively. It's usually not about some last-minute heroics. More often, there's this carefully designed system running underneath it all, mostly invisible. Today, we're kind of pulling back the curtain on that system. We're doing a deep dive into what's called an internal control framework. Think of it like the basic architecture, yeah. The blueprint for keeping an organization healthy, stable, and performing reliably. And for those who follow this stuff, we're mainly drawing on the COSO framework, its principles, its components.
Yeah, and our mission today is really to unpack the core parts of this framework, not just give you a definition, but a clear, structured sense of how organizations build in reliability, how they foster accountability, and frankly, how they navigate a pretty risky world. We'll be pulling out the key ideas from excerpts from Internal Control Framework, principles and components, trying to show the method behind, well, sometimes the operational madness.
And look, this isn't just for the auditors or the compliance folks, really. Understanding these ideas, it gives you these aha moments. You start seeing how any well-run system functions. What stops the chaos, what builds resilience. Could be a huge company, could even be how you manage your own complex projects. So let's get into this structure. Okay, so we're going to walk through 5 main components. They're distinct, but very much interconnected. Think of them like 5 pillars holding everything up. Each one vital, and each has its own set of critical principles underneath it. Let's start right at the bottom, the absolute foundation, the control environment. This isn't just rules on paper, is it? It's more about the culture, the vibe. What does an organization need to get right here at the core?
That's a really crucial point. The control environment, it absolutely sets the tone right from the top. It's the ethical bedrock, the commitment to doing things right, the whole attitude towards internal control that just permeates the place. If you don't have a strong, positive control environment, well, any controls you build on top are frankly built on shaky ground. And what people sometimes miss is this tone isn't just what leaders say. It's how those values are actually lived day in, day out.
Right, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So let's dig into those principles. The first one demonstrates commitment to integrity and values.
Mm.
Okay, so it's more than just stopping fraud, right? How does really living integrity actually work as a control?
Well, yeah, integrity is the foundation. Beyond just stopping, outright bad behavior, a real commitment creates this atmosphere of psychological safety. People feel okay speaking up about small things, maybe potential weaknesses, even just simple mistakes before they blow up. That kind of proactive chat born out of trust, it becomes this informal but super powerful control mechanism.
hmm Building on that, Principle 2 talks about who makes sure those values stick. It emphasizes, demonstrates independence, and exercises oversight responsibility. We think of independent boards, but are there subtle ways that true independence gets tricky in the real world?
Oh, definitely. That brings up the classic question, right? Who watches the watchers?
Yeah.
And how well? Boards are key, sure, but real independence means they aren't overly swayed by management. Their challenge function needs to be strong. A common issue is sort of groupthink, or maybe an internal echo chamber. Critical views get maybe unintentionally quieted down. You end up with blind spots because everyone's thinking too much alike, or maybe they're just afraid to rock the boat.
Okay. And once you have that oversight, Principle 3 gets practical, establishes structure, authority, and responsibility. Sounds pretty straightforward, but I bet it's easier said than done. What are the common tripwires here?
Clarity is just. It's
Yeah.
absolutely essential. And you're right, it's tougher than it looks on paper. Ambiguity. That's the enemy of good control. You often see organizations struggle with, like, overlapping jobs, fuzzy reporting lines, or just nobody clearly owns a specific process. That can create gaps where risks just sort of fester. Or the opposite, you get these hot potatoes where nobody wants to take responsibility when something goes sideways.
Gotcha. Okay, next, Principle 4 looks at the people. Demonstrates commitment to attracting, developing, and retaining competent staff. We know people are key. But how does putting resources into staff competence, how does that directly make the control system stronger?
Oh, it's a direct line. Controls, doesn't matter how cleverly designed, they're only as good as the humans running them and designing them. Investing in competence means people don't just have the skills for the job, but they get the why behind the controls they're doing. It includes training not just on the how-to, but also on spotting red flags, understanding the ethics of their actions, that sort of thing.
Right. And then wrapping up this control environment section, Principle 5 is about follow-through. Enforces accountability. This is the consequences part, yeah. Making sure the expectations actually mean something.
Exactly. Accountability closes that loop. It makes sure the standards set in the control environment are actually met, and that when things go off track, they aren't just noted, they're dealt with. Proper corrective action. Without consistent enforcement, even the best principles, they just become, nice suggestions. A big challenge here is making sure accountability is fair, applied the same way across all levels. You can't have rules feeling different for different people.
Okay, so the ethical compass is set, leadership's clear, the organization has its moral footing. But even the best ship needs to spot the icebergs, right? How do they look ahead? That takes us straight to risk assessment, asking what could go wrong.
Precisely. This part is all about being proactive, identifying, analyzing the potential threats to hitting your goals. It's like the organization's radar system, spotting problems, understanding their potential impact before they turn into full-blown crises. And it's not a one-off thing. It has to be continuous.
The very first step in that, Principle 6, is specify suitable, specific objectives. Sounds basic, but I guess fuzzy objectives could really mess up the whole risk process.
Oh, you nailed it. Objectives are your compass for risk assessment. If they're vague or they conflict or they're just pie-in-the-sky unrealistic, then figuring out what risks could stop you from getting there, it's basically impossible. Like trying to hit a target you can't even see clearly. You don't know what might make you miss if you don't know where the bullseye is.
Okay, then the core activity, Principle 7, identifies and analyzes risks. This is the real work, finding those potential problems.
Yeah.
What often gets missed in the analysis bit.
Yeah, the analysis part is often underestimated. It's not just making a list of what could go wrong. It's really digging into both the likelihood, how likely is this to happen, and the impact, how bad would it be if it did. Lots of organizations fall into this trap of only looking at the really obvious high probability stuff. They might underestimate a really damaging black swan event, Or they spend too much energy on frequent but low impact things and miss the truly big threats.
And Principle 8 focuses right in. Assesses fraud risk. Seems important enough to get its own principle, separate from other risks. Why single out fraud like that?
That's a really, really important question. Fraud risk gets its own spotlight because it's fundamentally different. It's not like an accident or a process breaking down. Fraud involves intent. Someone is deliberately trying to cheat the system, to exploit it. So organizations have to specifically think about who has the opportunity, the motivation, maybe the rationalization to commit fraud. People talk about the fraud triangle. Spotting intentional acts just needs a different kind of lens compared to, say, finding a simple process error.
Makes sense. And Principle 9. Identifies and analyzes significant changes. This accepts that risk isn't static, the world keeps changing. What sort of changes are we thinking about here?
Exactly. The world doesn't stand still. New regulations pop up, technology like AI gets adopted really fast, markets shift, geopolitical stuff happens. All these things bring new risks or they drastically change the old ones. So constantly watching for these changes is vital because controls that worked great yesterday might be totally useless or even create new problems in today's environment. Think about, the huge shift to remote work recently, all the new cyber risks that suddenly appeared.
All right, so we've got the strong ethical foundation, the control environment. We know what might go wrong from risk assessment. So what do we actually do about it? This must be where control activities come in, the actual actions, the defenses we put up.
Exactly right. These are the policies, the procedures that turn management's intentions into concrete actions to reduce risk. They're the real safeguards. The locks on the doors, the alarm systems, the guardrails on the highway, designed to bring those risks we found down to a level the organization is comfortable with.
Okay, so Principle 10 says, selects and develops control activities that help mitigate risks. Sounds like these aren't random things, but very specific, targeted actions.
Oh, absolutely targeted. They aren't just generic good practices. They're chosen specifically because they directly tackle an identified risk. Could be needing 2 signatures on big payments, or something more basic like making sure one person can't authorize, record, and check a transaction, what we call segregation of duties. Each activity has a clear job. Either stop a problem from happening or spot it really quickly if it does.
And then Principle 11. Selects and develops general controls over technology. Wow, in today's world, I imagine this is huge. Tech is everywhere.
Paramount is probably the word, especially now. And general controls over technology, it's way more than just basic IT security. It covers really critical stuff like managing risks from third-party cloud providers, securing all those remote workers, handling data privacy with all the data being collected, even adapting security for AI-driven automation. A failure in tech controls, that can expose an organization to just massive financial, reputational, operational damage. It's huge.
Yeah, I can see that. And principle 12, bases controls on thorough policies and procedures. This sounds like structured documentation. Is it just about the paperwork, or is there more to it?
It's definitely more than just paperwork, though that's part of it. Consistency and clarity are what's really vital here. Controls shouldn't just be made up on the spot, and they need to be clearly written down. People need to understand them, and they need to be applied the same way every time across the organization. This makes sure they actually work, that you can rely on them, and you can defend them if, say, an auditor or regulator asks questions. Without that clarity and documentation, even good controls can just fizzle out because they're not done consistently.
Okay. So we built the ethical house with the control environment, we've checked for termites with risk assessment, and we've installed locks and alarms with control activities. How do we make sure everyone inside knows what's going on, that the right information is flowing? That sounds like information and communication.
It really is the nervous system of the whole thing. Without good information flowing and clear communication, the other parts just they can't work properly. It's how the organization's, let's say, brain gets signals from the environment and tells the limbs what to do.
Principle 13 starts us off. Uses relevant, high-quality information. It sounds like the classic garbage in, garbage out problem, right? Bad info leads to bad decisions.
You're absolutely right. Your decisions, your controls, they're only as good as the information behind them. High-quality data, meaning accurate, timely, relevant data. It's fundamental for controls to work. It lets managers and employees do their jobs, spot new risks, check on existing controls. A common trap, though, information overload. Getting buried in data where quantity gets mistaken for quality makes it really hard to see what actually matters.
Right. Then principle 14, communicates internally to support controls. This is about the info flow inside the organization.
Yeah, everyone needs to be on the same page about their own role, their responsibilities, and why controls matter in their everyday work. Good internal communication builds that shared understanding. It helps make sure control activities happen correctly, that problems get flagged quickly, and that everyone gets how their little piece fits into the bigger picture of keeping things running smoothly and safely. Often comes back to that psychological safety we mentioned, feeling safe to share bad news upwards.
Makes sense. And principle 15 says it's not just internal, communicates externally. Talking to the outside world, too.
That's right. This covers sharing important information with people outside the company, like investors, regulators, customers. It's crucial for transparency, for meeting legal or ethical duties, and just for maintaining trust with the outside world. Could be anything from financial reports to, unfortunately, communicating about a data breach. Doing that well, openly, and honestly. That's a control in itself against further reputational damage.
Okay, finally, we arrive at monitoring activities. Because let's face it, you can't just build this amazing system and then, walk away, right?
Yeah.
Things change, people make mistakes, stuff happens. This is like the ongoing checkup.
Absolutely not. You can't walk away. This component is all about constantly checking if the internal control system is still working effectively over time. It's the continuous improvement loop, the feedback mechanism that makes sure controls stay relevant, they stay functional, and they adapt as things change. Without monitoring, even the best system will eventually just degrade, become obsolete.
And Principle 16 talks about how this happens, conducts ongoing and under separate evaluations. So there are different ways to do this checking.
Exactly. And what's interesting is this sort of dual approach. Ongoing monitoring, these are the checks that are built right into everyday operations. Think about automated reconciliations that run daily, or managers reviewing their team's work as part of their normal routine. They're happening all the time. Separate evaluations, though, those are more periodic, focused assessments, like an internal audit team coming in to take a deep, fresh look at specific controls, or maybe the whole system, just to make sure it's really working as intended, not just, on paper.
Okay, and wrapping up the entire framework, Principle 17, evaluates and communicates deficiencies. So, find the problems and make sure they get fixed, not just noted somewhere and forgotten.
Precisely. Finding problems isn't enough. They have to be properly evaluated. How serious is this? And then clearly communicated to the people who can actually fix them. The real challenge often is making sure those fixes actually happen and that they truly address the root cause, not just put a Band-Aid on it. This whole cycle, finding issues, evaluating them, communicating them, fixing them, that's what keeps the system strong and responsive. It allows the organization to learn and adapt continuously.
So there we have it, 5 big pieces, all interconnected.
Mm-hmm.
Control environment, risk assessment, control activities, information communication, and monitoring activities, each one held up by these crucial principles. It's a pretty comprehensive system for building a truly resilient, trustworthy organization.
Yeah, and understanding this framework, even just the basics, it gives you this really powerful lens to look at any organization. It's kind of a shortcut to seeing the complexity behind things running smoothly. You appreciate how committing to these principles builds that resilience, builds trust with everyone involved, and ultimately just helps the organization hit its goals reliably and ethically. It's like the invisible plumbing of success.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, maybe a final thought for you to chew on. As you think about these 5 components, which one do you think is maybe most often overlooked in the real world? Or perhaps the hardest one to keep strong, especially when things are moving fast or changing all the time?
Mhm.
You know, what do you think is the biggest, maybe unforeseen consequence of letting that particular component slide? Something to think about as you look at the systems around you. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into internal control frameworks. Until next time, keep exploring and keep asking those important questions.